very quickly as we're trying to stall for just a minute. Is that working? Okay, great. A couple of folks. Todd Hauber, our business administrator for Granite School District. I believe we're expecting probably some other district folks. If you guys want to, Leslie, let's go, one of our assistant superintendents here, Sherry Sorensen, Noah Converse, curriculum and ELI specialist, and then some. Dora, would you go ahead and just briefly make an announcement about translation services?
Los que necesiten traducción, si pueden ocupar estas sillas que están marcadas, por favor.
Perfect. Again, I believe, hopefully this is fairly accurate. If anyone needs that there, Dora will also be translating directly if you need that, and I'll do my best to not speak too fast to help tonight. So, again, thanks for being here. This is very, very important. Just quick show of hands, how many are from this area, from Valley Crest? Okay, good number, which is typical when we have it at a school. Do we have others? Stansbury? Because we're there tomorrow night. Most people will probably come there tomorrow night. We have Monroe represented. Good. Okay, Hillsdale. Good. Fantastic. We're doing the same thing tomorrow night. So you can come twice. Make sure I say the same thing both nights. Or if you want to go get home tonight, think of your 5 best questions you wish you would have asked. So come tomorrow night and do that. But it really is the same presentation. So glad you're here. I'm going to go through fairly quickly this PowerPoint presentation. I want most of our time tonight, if possible, to be your questions. Things that maybe we're not thinking of. I will talk about some proposals, some recommendations that Granite District is making regarding DLI, and even bigger picture for our current boundary study. But regardless of how good we think our data is, and how good I'm pretty sure it is, we don't know everything. We don't know your communities. We don't know how you feel about DLI, how strongly, how passionately, what you're willing to do to continue DLI. That's why we're here. I think you've been handed, everyone get a copy of the survey on the way in. Okay. You're welcome to do that now, but you might get information here that might determine how you fill that survey out. There's also a QR code that I believe we have fixed now to help you if you want to do that electronically. If you fill this out now and change your mind later, just let us know. So, bottom line is we have to have your input to make a good decision here. I think, again, we have a pretty good idea, but if there are 800 students between the 4 schools that we'll talk about 800 DLI students, because of course many come from outside of these 4 boundaries. If 400 decide they want to do a certain thing, if all 800 want to do a certain thing, that's great. If only 100, that will determine what I think the district will approve, and it's a board decision, by the way. This is a decision, not my decision as the director of planning and boundaries, not Sherry's or Noel's. This will absolutely be a Granite School District board decision. So, walking in very quickly in the back also is Mitch Durden, Chief of Staff to Superintendent Horsley from Granite District. He's here to watch and monitor what I say. Kim's here. Oh, sorry. Kim, board member, Kim Chandler in the back. Again, we'll have a few others, and I'll try to point them out as we come in. So let's just jump in. I'll try to go through these as quickly as possible. You're welcome to raise your hand at any point as we go through this, or I'll stay after. I'll try to finish this presentation and most of the questions within about an hour. But some people are just more comfortable coming up personally after, and I'll stay after until the custodian kicks us out, and be glad to chat any questions you have. So, agenda. We just want to make it official by having an agenda. Everybody's seen an agenda. Let's just skip to that. This is our process. I want everyone to know there is a process for boundary closure studies. What we're talking about tonight with the DOI programs is part of this year's study. It is part of this process. It's a year-long, calendar year-long process that started back in February and will conclude in December, so in a couple of months. You can see, of course, starting at the top, December to February, we've been holding meetings, we've been getting feedback, we did a lot of refinement, narrowed some things down over the summer. Now we're back to the September area where we have this meeting tonight, another meeting tomorrow night. We have 2 large community meetings next week, one at Granger High, one at Hunter High, to talk even bigger picture, not just DOI, but the boundary studies in general. Those are next week. I go back to the board in October. The board makes an initial recommendation or a first reading in November with a final recommendation or final action or decision in December. Whatever happens is typically implemented and started next school year, so about a year from now. Okay, that's general timeline. Okay? That study, what we call the 3500 South Corridor Study, and I'll be real honest, we started calling it the 3100 South Corridor Study because that's largely what it is. The area we were looking at was along 3100 South. We just simply changed it to 35 because more people associated 3500 South with maybe the entire corridor. So that really is the area. The green box outlines, in fact, we just changed this the other day. And this box now comes over a little further to include Lake Ridge and Pleasant Green. But there are about 20 schools, 20 elementary schools that we've been considering for either closure or boundary changes. Within that, part of that, one of the main reasons that we started this study had a lot to do with DOI, dual language immersion in Spanish in particular. Okay? Why? So many schools along this corridor are struggling to maintain effective traditional classes in conjunction with DOI because their total enrollment is too small. I don't know if anyone's from this community, it's been here a long time, but you remember this school or the other schools along the corridor when they were 600, 700, 800 students? I've been in the district 27 years, and I remember when we had 70,000+ students in the district. Now we're about 57,000, give or take a few hundred. We're smaller, many reasons for that, but we're smaller. DLI has been around 16, 17, 18 years, in that range. And so things have changed. You really need a larger school population of typically a minimum of 500, really 600 or more to have an effective DOI and effective traditional school program for DOI to be in that school. Next. By the way, it says DLI Task Force. Again, I chair, part of my job is to chair what's called the Population Analysis Committee. It's just really a group of all the directors in the district, and they help guide and counsel and advise and challenge me on things that we should do for these studies. So, as part of that group, we asked certain people that had expertise in DOI to form a task force to help us understand better the challenges of DOI, specifically Spanish DOI in these areas. Okay? Now we started with looking at these 5 schools. Granger, you can see on the bottom there with the circle. Do we have the next slide that talks about Granger? Let's just go back.
Well, you've got it up here.
Okay. Bottom line is, after looking at Granger closely, just kind of took Granger off the radar for right now. They have DOI, they will continue to have DOI Spanish at their school. So what we're talking about tonight are the 4 schools along the corridor, Valley Crest, Monroe, Hillsdale, Stanford. Okay? Keep in mind that when DOI first came out, and until recently, in fact, until just the last year, DOI, having any DOI, Spanish, French, Chinese, whatever, was a school community-based program. So in other words, the district did not tell a school or community, whether they could or could not have a DLI. The school community council, principal, PTA, community worked together, voted, gave input on whether to start these programs. Some people ask us, why did we put, as a district, why did we put these 4, even 5 schools so close together? We didn't necessarily, the communities did, and at the time it made sense. It made sense. The schools were bigger, like I mentioned. It was also seen as a feather in your cap, as a school and community. It was used to draw more students to the school, and initially, that happened a lot. As school size and enrollment went down, that started to change things. And so we noticed that the need to be able to, on occasion, like now, intervene to make sure that all students are getting the best, most resources, the best education possible in any program, whether it's DLI or traditional classes. Okay, so the DLI School-Based Programs Task Force was asked to consider options for addressing issues surrounding the declining enrollment along 3100 South. After considering possible options, the committee was tasked with making recommendations that could be presented to the PAC. Summarize this. By the way, you'll have access. Is this posted yet on our website? Okay. All of this will be posted. Are we recording? This presentation will be recorded, unfortunately, so everything that I say that could be misconstrued will be right here. So you'll be able to see this yourself later. Conclusion. Again, we talked about Granger. That just means Granger Elementary is taken off and that they're being treated separately as part of the bigger picture. Okay? I'm not going to, well, you'll see this on the slides. I'll just give you a very, very brief explanation. It simply is just as it looks. All 4 schools, what their total enrollment is. Now, this was taken a week after school started up, I believe. So if you look up here and you think, okay, maybe those numbers are off slightly, they could be, they likely are. So the data is a week or 2 old, but pretty close. Total enrollment for schools per grade, DLI. So if we're looking at Monroe here, it's total enrollment, total DLI enrollment in the boundaries. How many of the students from Monroe live in the boundaries? How many are out of the boundaries? Since most of our folks here are from Valley Crest, you can look at that pretty quickly and see Valley Crest has the least number of students in the boundary. 250 almost, but the most number of students out. So in other words, about half. You're about half and half here with DLI enrollment in the boundary and half not. It gives us some idea of what those enrollments look like in those 4 schools. Again, if you want me to come back to that data, I'll be glad to. I want to get through these slides, and that's for you to pick apart later if you want to, and call me and email me and post things on social media. So. Okay. I'll keep picking them out as they come in. Again, thank you, board members. We have one of the best boards around. Connie is here now. I'm missing Connie Burgess. Oh, here's Julie Jackson over here. They do typically like to just sneak in and sit quietly and blend in, but I want you guys to know they're here because they're here to hear your voice and your concerns too. Okay, so with that as a background, basically, here are the basic considerations that the Population Analysis Committee, or the DLI Task Force, is considering. There's only 2 options, really. Option 1, option 2. Option 1, go from 4 schools with DLI down to 2. And it's very specific, though. Discontinue the DLI program at either Valley Crest or Monroe, so one of those 2 schools no longer have DLI, Hillsdale or Salisbury. Make sense? You can't have just Hillsdale and Salisbury or just Valley Crest or Monroe. One of those out of each of those pairs. So 4 to 2, no phase out. That just simply means that next year, if that's the choice that's chosen, it's no more DLI at those schools. We don't phase it out by grade, by year. Okay? Again, beginning next year. By the way, we do our best to, and usually a pretty dang good job of translating some of these, but if someone sees an error up here that could be embarrassing for us, please let us know in translation. We like to catch those. Sometimes we find them, but please let us know. Or in English, by the way. I grew up in Tennessee. My English, I struggle. So if you see an English error also, please let us know. So the benefits, pretty straightforward. Bolsters DLI enrollment for the receiving school, creating a more robust and viable DLI program. Most of those, 3 of those 4 schools have 2 DLI classes per grade. Hillsdale is just 1. Schools being combined or near each other geographically. This makes sense, right? Is that enough to make it work? Other considerations, not necessarily benefits, and not always bad, but small school issues are made worse by moving dual immersion students from one to another. So in other words, if you take all of your DLI students and that leaves you with 250 traditional students, that creates its own set of problems. That's generally why we're doing the study in the first place. That's why we do most of our studies year in and year out, is because when schools, we know that schools can be too big, and we had that problem years ago. That's when we had, again, 75,000 students. The schools can be too small. When they're too small, that creates its own set of challenges. But that's what happens, because when you have DLI, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but when you have DLI at school, in a lot of ways, it's like running 2 schools in one building. It's a challenge. We could talk to principals and others about the challenge that is in one school when you're less than probably 500 to 600 students. Okay? And then strong traditional enrollment need to be maintained to support those students. Option 2. That was all of option 1. It's going from 4 to 2. Option 2 is, in essence, use one of those 4 schools that we just showed on 3100 South as a designated Spanish DLI magnet school and discontinue DLI in the other 3 schools beginning next year. Every current student in the designated DLI school would be offered enrollment in DLI. So in other words, if you're in DLI in any school, you have a place. Okay? You have a place. Pretty straightforward. I'll tell you very honestly and transparently that the DLI task force has been very open with me and the PAC and others internally in Granite District. And this is the one they prefer. This is the one they prefer. That does not mean that's what's happening. They could prefer this, I could prefer this all day long. But really what's going to have the most sway is your input, your vote, if you will. And that's really not a vote, but your input. If you tell us what you prefer and why. That is why, again, I'll keep stressing, the survey is critical. Where I was at board meeting last night and talked over and over about the survey data that tells us what your parents want to do. If you want to go from 4 to 2, why? Tell us why, please. There's a box in there to write your own. You can write a thesis if you want to. Or if you want it to be the magnet school, tell us why. There's another important, very important caveat that is not official, that does not have board approval. I'll say that again, not official, does not have board approval. However, the DLI task force has told me and the board that they believe for this magnet school to be viable long-term, they believe transportation should be part of that solution. Okay, and that means, I want to be very clear, if you live, just like now, you have to live 1.5 miles away from a school to receive transportation. And that would be the same, whatever happens here. I'm going to go one step further, and this is a big step. I'm going to repeat myself. This is not yet, and is not been approved by anyone. The other big piece of this that the task force has strongly recommended so far is that the magnet school be here at Valley Crest. Is that official? Okay, here's a test. Did I say that's a done deal?
Yes.
Okay, wait, you don't say anything. Did I say that's a done deal? No, it's not a done deal. Okay, I know, that's the problem. And this is also protection for me, but this is on video. So, that's not a done deal. And let me give you one example. Again, 800 students currently in DLI. I don't think, even if we do have transportation, we'll get all 800. That's just not realistic. But if you got crazy and a lot of people wanting to come from all over the district and come to a special DLI Spanish school, which we think there's some advantages here. We think we can recapture some students back from charter schools, recapture students from other areas of the district, because it'll be a special, unique school that, if it's way over capacity, can it still be handled here at Valley Crest? Maybe. I mean, there was a time when there were 7, 8 relocatable classrooms outside. I've talked to principals that have been here years past, and it can be done. But nothing is official. So much of this decision depends on your feedback, what you tell us you want to do, you're willing to do to make this work, how strongly you feel. Some people will say, I'm only in DLI because it's at my school, and that's easy, it's cool. You go to school like you always do, you're in DLI Spanish. Fantastic. If that's what it is for you and your family, fantastic. If you don't want to in any other way, go to another school, completely get it. I'm a big fan of parent choice and programs, and everyone needs to do what they need to do for their families. If you still feel strongly enough that perhaps you're willing to go to a different location for a program, then that's what we need to know. Okay? Benefits quickly. Focusing on building a strong DLI program with all teachers using DLI. I could see this, and I don't do the hiring for the district, but I could see, it just makes sense to me that the principal of a DLI magnet school would be speaking Spanish. Both, all administrators would be. You just get to focus everything on the teaching, and you don't have to worry about trying to maintain traditional programs / DLI program. Addresses concerns about having enough students for DLI program. Again, it takes away a lot of those, quote, small school issues. Rebranding. We've talked about this, and again, this is another one that I can't promise or guarantee, but the committee, the DLI task force, came to us and said, wouldn't it be cool if this was the solution, and is it called, Spanish Dual Language Academy, or you rebrand the school, you put new signage or new mascot, or I don't know. But those are just some things, proposals that were sent to us. Some of those are out of my control as far as money and some of those, but I think those are things that are important for parents to hear. Is it going to be just about language, or is there something more unique that makes the school stand out? Those are just a few of the ideas. Okay, next one. Oh, sorry. Small school issues are potentially made more difficult by moving dual immersion students. So in other words, if most all the students leave the other 3 schools and come to the one, how does that impact those other 3 schools? How small does that make them? We have to look at that. We have to consider that. Again, that's the bigger picture. What I'll be talking about more in detail next week is the other side of the coin. Is if you don't have the DLI students, and most of them do want to go, holy cow, you might have a traditional school of 300 students or less, and that has its own challenges. Limited implementation of the DLI magnet program in Utah. So in other words, we don't have a perfect model. There are a couple of other schools in the state, Cache Valley, Logan area, that are kind of doing this, but they're not as large as we are. They have different ways of implementing it. There's a charter school out there that kind of does the model, but not like we're talking about. So Do we have a perfect model to look at and copy and say, let's just do it just like them because they're doing it really well? We don't. Just complete transparency, we don't. However, what we do have is a lot of great resources, a lot of great people that have been doing things a long time, that have already given us a ton of good ideas and things to think about. We believe make this program work. May alter the feeder patterns to secondary programs. So in other words, currently the DLI feeders, you leave here, if you leave Valley Crest, you go to Westlake and Granger. That, and I'm gonna lean on these guys. If I say something wrong, please stand up or throw something at me, get it right. We will not lose that option at Westlake. Instead, add at Hunter Junior or other schools, Brockbank, whatever school is needed, so that those other secondary schools also have that option. So we're not taking it away, we'll just be adding.
So with the magnet,
With the magnet school, what happens to kindergarten? Does that come into DLI as well?
There's a microphone right behind you guys. Her question again, kindergarten. That's a great question.
I'll use teacher voice. With DLI magnet, there would be kindergarten. DLI kindergarten.
Let's just put 3 microphones.
There would be DLI kindergarten in the magnet school.
So that would be the plan, yes, to have DLI kindergarten. It's a little different, we haven't tried that before. The challenge is, you start in first grade because most people are aware. And because in kindergarten, you have to try to get the word out to people that we don't know who they are and where they are sometimes. But yes, that would be the plan, to start in kindergarten. A couple more, then we're going to really get to your questions. Again, demand may exceed school capacity, like I mentioned. If this really takes off, which I think could, and then we have so many that want to get in, then how do we handle that? My opinion on that is a good problem to have. We'll solve that when we cross that bridge, when we come to it, but we don't know. We have heard from quite a few people that say they really like this idea, but sometimes I do hear that come August, next August, maybe not as much of an idea. Okay? What else? Okay. You have the survey. The QR code takes you to the same place. This will be on our website. Before I take questions, let me give you a few other pieces of information. Please do this as soon as possible. Please do something tonight before you leave. We are going to try, as a district task force, the PAC, the board, if possible, to make a decision on this soon. And that means it really needs to be made before next board meeting in October. So the sooner we get the data, the sooner we hear from parents. I'm probably going to wait and give one more effort at SEPs in a couple of weeks to have DLI teachers maybe get some more feedback. But that doesn't mean don't turn these in tonight. Please turn these in, spread the word, tell your other friends and parents that are in DLI to please look this up. They can call me, they can contact us, go and look at this, go watch this video, let us know how you feel, and one way or the other. If you think these both stink, I don't like them, I can handle it. I'm a career educator, by the way. I'm not a business background. I'm a teacher, former teacher. 17 years building administrator. Been doing this about 10 years, but I'm a 30-year educator. So I can handle it. If you think it stinks, tell us so, but you have to tell us why. If you think it's good, great. If you think it's sort of good, okay, it'd be better if we did this. All that information we have to have, really, really need it. Okay, we're going to start here, but if you can, don't have to, but if you want to stand over there, we put that microphone back, because when people start raising hands, I'm going to get somebody out of order. Somebody's going to be mad because they got to find somebody. Come up to the microphone and ask your questions there. I want to make sure everyone gets on the microphone. I'll start with you. I'll go ahead and finish that, and then we'll go to the microphone.
So I'm curious about what happened to the extra Spanish teachers that, like, are we going to have an excess amount?
What will happen to Spanish teachers? By the way, we had a meeting last night just for DLI teachers, and a good number of them showed up. Do we have any of those teachers here tonight? Okay. and you don't have to admit it. But, so, a great question. We even had HR come and talk to those teachers. We've closed 7 schools in the last 5 years in our district, and we haven't had to what we call RIF, or in other words, say, sorry, we don't have a job for you anymore, because as teachers move generally with students. Just because you close a school, we still have students that need to be taught, and teachers move. And we believe that is the case, even especially in the magnet, with the magnet option, that there should be plenty of room for all of our teachers. Again, I don't want to misspeak. I'm not HR. I don't assign teachers. Some of those, that depends on certifications, what they can teach, what they need, how many students choose to come. Again, it goes back to your data. If we only have 250 that say they're committed to coming, that's one thing. If we have 650, that means we need more teachers. We'll need every one of the current teachers and then some probably to fill out a staff for a school like that. So bottom line is we haven't had to let teachers go. We have enough room. Last year there were how many hires? 12, 13, 14 BLI hires?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And there's just natural attrition and turnover that happens also. So with that, I can never guarantee, but we haven't had to do that. One of the advantages of a larger district like we have. Okay, we're going to come over here. And we'll use that door, use that microphone on that side if someone wants to use it. Help me watch if somebody's next in line.
Okay, 2 questions. One's more of like a clarifying about option phase 1, where if you close 2 schools for dual immersion, and so those 2 schools that you keep would be only dual immersion. It wouldn't be like Valley Crest where it has dual and English.
Ooh, great question. I'm glad I got a chance to clarify this. If it's the 4-2 option, that's option 1, those 2 schools would continue to be both traditional and DLI. So it's not like 2 magnet schools. They would just, so if Stansbury was the school, all the DLI students from Hillsdale would be offered a place at Stansbury. Stansbury would continue to have traditional students, or vice versa. That,
It does, but now it opens for another question. So would it make the population of the DLI more like overbearing? Because already, like, I feel like our classes are getting bigger and bigger. So if you're gonna throw in another double amount of kids into 2 different schools, and then also keep the problems of trying to keep both curriculums going, wouldn't that add more problems?
it can create some unique situations, yes. Problems, opportunities, situations. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that if we have all of a sudden now 3, maybe 4 DLI per grade level and only 1 or 2 traditional, there's still some challenges there.
Okay, and so my other question would be, how come there's not an option 3 where it would just be like 2 magnet schools, 2 English-speaking schools, so that you're kind of like breaking away from that problem of having, how come there's not option 3?
So kind of a in the middle
Yeah.
compromise option. I want to put words into the task force mouth. I know that they've looked at that, reviewed some of those options, and I'm going to say this, or look at you if you want to add to it. It just didn't feel like we had enough students to support really those options at all 4 schools.
Okay, and last question, for people who are the out of bounds, how's that gonna affect them? Like, is there gonna be less of a chance that we would get like an out of bounds permit to go to either the magnet school, or even if they lower to the 2, that we would get less of a chance of going to one of the 2?
Right. First of all, if you're in the program already, you're in. So we got to make that work. We need to honor that commitment to a family that's made a commitment to get through that program. The only time I think that would not, or if you're in, you're in. But if it's a future student and somehow we start off with a magnet school that's 700, 800, then we have to start prioritizing. And that priority looks like, boundary students or students in the area, before we take out-of-district students or someone coming from another school, that sort of thing. We do have priorities, kind of a stacked priority at other schools, but that's the only time, because if it's so large that, we can't handle anymore, and we have to create some sort of priority list. Is that, am I missing something on the priorities?
Se puede
Right.
here.
Okay.
So, so, so with a magnet school, what happens to the other 3 schools? Do they like all become, like they could become traditional, but would one of them then close because of not enough student population?
With the magnet school, what happens to the other 3? Could one close? Don't see that happening. We really don't have that on the radar. Again, it all depends on how many come to the magnet school, right? You saw the numbers, the tables. If a school loses every one of their students, I keep in mind, and you'll see more of this next week, there's some other moving parts here that I'm not talking about as much tonight, and that's the bigger study. There's some other potential school closures that are there, and then there's some boundary changes because of that could and probably will impact some of these other schools. But that's why I feel like I'm running in place right now, and even the board was a little frustrated with me last night probably because they keep asking me questions, and I said, well, I don't know until we get enough survey feedback to know how many people we feel confident or committed to one of these programs or the other. Fantastic question, though, and it keeps me up at night.
Follow up to that.
I'm gonna come back over here, then come back to this one.
Okay, I just had a follow up
Okay,
to that.
don't let me forget. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just a follow-up question with some, and clarifying questions with some of the previous, lady that was up here. So with classroom sizes already being at a breaking point, for the DLI classes that my daughter's been in, how do you accommodate that with a magnet school? To where there are smaller class sizes, because learning a second language and learning curriculum is difficult as it is, individually. But to add the pure amount of chaos with numbers of children in there, I'm more concerned about education in both aspects.
Okay. Two things. Keep in mind that generally speaking, if you have a school of 250 students, and I'm kind of making some numbers up a little bit, 250 students, you have approximately 10 teachers. The formula technically is 27.25 students for every 1 teacher. Now, that's an average. It's not exactly like that in any classroom. Some are a lot higher, some are a lot lower. So if you have 250 students in a building and 10 teachers, well, if you have 500 students, you don't still have 10 teachers, then you have 20 teachers. So the more students you have, the more teachers you have. So will class sizes increase? They shouldn't. In fact, that's one of the benefits of having a little larger school that we think is a good size in that 500 to 600 range, is those classes tend to level out and not have these huge peaks and valleys in sizes of classes. Now, DLI can be different in that you most of the time start off with your lower grades, like we have first, second, third, or your highest DLI, and oftentimes you'll see people just drop out through attrition, don't want to continue or move or whatever. So you get lower class sizes in some of your upper grades in DLI. We think also, that's one of the advantages of a magnet school, is having the ability to perhaps have waiting lists. It's not just about learning. One of the big hidden treasures and advantages is our current native speakers in Spanish that can join at any point. You don't have to join at first grade. If you're a speaker there, and we want those because they're great for our native English speakers to learn with and for in that type of program. So all of those things combined, we think we can level out better. And again, when you're only talking one program, you're not trying to balance out your traditional classes with your DLI classes, that it will only help average those class sizes out where they need to be.
So is there a target size per classroom with a magnet school that you guys are looking at specifically?
Would you say it's any different than?
No difference?
the 27.5. Typically, like Steve said, in dual immersion, you have to start a little bit larger in the lower grades. The thing about the magnet school, we have a lot more flexibility with our teaching staff, because in the traditional school with the dual immersion, you've got to balance. You still got to have an English traditional classroom. The magnet school would not have that issue. So it might be possible that one teacher might teach half day one grade and half day another grade. That could be a possibility, but we're never having to have that traditional program. So there's a lot more flexibility in how you would staff it.
Okay, and just to kind of go on to more of a superficial question, do you have so this school is looking at being like the magnet school location, it's
Possibly.
exactly the possibly. However, the other schools that are thrown in there, do we get to see what they look like on the inside?
Ooh, good question.
Is there like open house touring for parents to see the schools and have a vote of which one we would like?
By the way, Ann Breeze here, my administrative assistant slash half my brain. She's gonna write that down, and if we need to, perhaps we can find a way to have you look at these other schools. It's a great question. Hey, why would I send my child somewhere I don't even know what that school is like?
Well, because it's gonna be a magnet school, you kind of want it to be a step above the, run down
Sure.
school, potentially, that we have.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. Let me see what kind of answer I can get for you. By the way, one of the reasons we collect emails is so we can use those and respond back to you with a lot of these in a group type email, or we'll post them on the website. But I think it's a great, valid question and concern.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going back to the side. We're still over here. Okay, you win.
So I am an out-of-boundaries parent. When I first moved here and had digital language immersion, I researched and found the closest one to me. And so I was concerned, like, hearing about how that might become difficult. I have one more child that he's not ready for the program yet.
Maybe you can handle it. Maybe we can start next year.
Yeah. Like a special consideration for siblings with that.
Okay, again, I'm going to repeat that. It's important. Is there a special consideration for siblings of what we would consider current families? Yes, we have given a higher priority for that. And I want to be careful here. Likelihood there shouldn't be a problem. That all depends on that capacity issue again. But we've always given siblings of those in the program higher priority than those that are not. I mean, we don't want to separate families, and if we want to be there, our goal is to keep families together. So we would make every effort to make that work.
I just moved to West Valley in November, and
We need to move the microphone up. You're welcome to do so. It was for me. I'm not sure. That's perfect.
I moved to West Valley in November, and I came from Willa. And my daughter actually was at Crest, it's a German magnet school. And Willa is actually phasing that school out this year.
Wow.
So they tried to have it be a magnet school for the past 5 years, since 2019.
And that's, we're talking elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay.
It went from, it's German, and it's gonna be phased out to nothing. Like, they're not even gonna have it out there at all anymore. And there's only a few in states anyway. So it's upset a lot of people out there, but I just have some concern that we make it as a magnet school, because they made it a magnet school to help the population, But then
For all those German speakers and
they have to be German to go to that, they have to speak German at that school, because that's what that is. So parents who didn't want their kids doing that, or if one sibling decided to do it and the other didn't, that's really problematic, and then it's like, because you don't want your kid to do it if they're not gonna be engaged into it. So it just made the other schools balloon and that one decrease. And that's why they're just doing away with it. So I'm just concerned that that's gonna happen here, and it won't be here again.
German, and let me say this, is Tooele a German word? I don't know. And I'm gonna say this, in full disclosure, my sister-in-law teaches German. Used to be in Granite District years ago, but now is in a DLI German situation, not in this county, in another county. So hopefully she doesn't see this, but I'm just not sure, first of all, every school district is different, the sizes of school districts are different, demand is different. German, I'm gonna tell you, is, that's gonna be a challenge. I have a German DLI magnet school. That one, I wish them well, I hope something works there, but that one's gonna be
No,
tough.
they're doing away with it.
But again, I think we're unique enough to be an advantage to have Spanish language in an area that has plenty of Spanish speakers and others that want to speak Spanish in this area. There are plenty out here. There's plenty of demand, I believe.
I understand that, but what I was also trying to say is like, you split up the families of those kids that didn't want to do it, so it made the other schools balloon more, like have more students there and less at that school.
I think one of the benefits to Granite District is, as Steve mentioned, so if you had a child that one of them wanted to do dual immersion and another one did not, we have options available. We have Granger Elementary that still has traditional classes plus dual immersion. We have Vista, we have West Currents, we have other options for families. So if that were the case, you would maybe look to take your child to one of those schools.
I wish I had, just like with the foundry studies, and people get tired of me hearing me say this, whether it's a DLI or other decision that we make. I wish there were a perfect solution and we had all the answers. We don't. In fact, most of the time, they are really, really good solutions. They're going to come with some unintended consequences and some challenges we're going to have to work through. Can some of these negative things happen? Can something like that happen? I guess it's possible. It's possible the board could vote for a magnet school and we find out, for whatever reason, unknown reason, in 5 years, it's not working. I don't know, things happen. Economics happen. A lot of things happen in our lives where this doesn't work anymore. That's what we do in education. We're going to have to be flexible and nimble and figure things out. So, but we do feel like this is a good viable option. And if I'm not answering the question fully, if you think you need more in-depth answer, come see me after. Let's talk some more. Yes, ma'am. Or do we have a question over here? Okay. We're going to get you up for the night's over. We'll get you over here. Okay.
So we had our boys in one of these other GLI schools, and the influence of those students was not great for our family. So we moved them to what we thought was better. But now you guys are forcing our hands to get us retroback to 2 years ago before we moved. Because now my student is going to be with all those kids that we left. Because of how they treated our kids. And so, first of all, what's the next closest DLI Spanish elementary, not on the 31st?
So the others are Granger Elementary, West Currents Elementary, and Vista on generally this west of the interstate. I'm not forgetting one, I think it's those three.
So those then, if you're in the program, can you move to one of those schools? Like, do you still have the you're in? Even, I'm an outer boundary
Right.
as it is.
Right. It would be, every school's a little different, space available. If you have a child that's going to be in 4th grade and they have a class size of already 33, that's a little tougher, I'm just being honest. But if it's a situation where there needs to be a move and you've appealed and talked to administrators, and I'm on an appeal committee to help people find solutions like that, absolutely, we want to do everything to help you find a home. We just hate for you to, because of some situations like that, not be able to finish the program.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes us nervous.
Yeah, I
That now
understand.
they're being forced to be combined with the
Yeah.
students we had to leave 2 years ago.
I think I'd be shocked out of all the 800 students if you were the only one with a similar concern. Like I just said, we're gonna have, I think, some real good solutions. Is it gonna be perfect for everyone? Probably not, because someone like you is saying, that didn't work for us. And now we gotta go back with some other personalities that just made it difficult. Let's talk and see if we can find a solution. Dora, you just have to let me know if I'm missing someone over there, please. You can do it, you can do it. Please, you can do it.
Well, I don't want to like
Please.
point over everybody.
So can I just say?
Yes, please.
I just want to make sure you know that our policy, we've been through, this is our third time now doing, talking about changing boundaries and stuff. Our policy is to bend over backwards to help you find something that works for you. We really, really understand that it's disruptive to your families, and so we want to do anything we can to try to get you in a place where you're happy. So while we'll have places that we're like, okay, this is where now all your kids' friends and all the kids in their class will go from here, we also will look at your individual families' needs.
Know that I might smile and joke a bit, but I've been, again, doing this for more than 10 years. I understand that decisions like this and other decisions that close schools and change boundaries affect people personally. They affect your lives, your routines. You buy a house in an area near your job or that school for a reason, and the district comes along and tries to make a good decision, but yet it still affects you even when it is a good decision. So there are things that are going to happen in any decision we make that make it very difficult. Acknowledge that completely. I'll add one more caveat so we don't leave too quickly, and that is one of the things I learned early on is that children are resilient. I got to be careful. I don't want this to sound preachy, but as a former teacher, principal, and in this job, children, students are resilient. They may not like at first the thought or idea of a new school, but they adapt to change a lot better than us adults do. I can promise you. Us adults have a bigger problem with change. Most of the time, children are very resilient. I absolutely understand, especially those with special needs, mental and emotional health concerns, and those that really need a routine. Acknowledge it can be difficult for those students. Absolutely. Absolutely. For about 95% of our students, something I lost sleep over the first couple of years of doing this. I found out that they adapt. They'll be okay for the most part. Parents, some are still mad at me after 10 years, but children generally are okay.
And multiple questions now. So, first, with option 1 and 2, both of them, I guess it would be more so with option 2 with the magnet school. It would apply more. So you have your 4 schools, one would become the magnet. You would redo the boundaries of whatever school becomes the magnet, and that would get shifted.
Yes.
That would all shift. So it's not like looking at the numbers, you can't just like add the numbers together and go, okay, well, this school suddenly only has 250 students in it.
Right.
And so that, okay.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. If you have one school to magnet school, then you have to create a different boundary. So those that are in there that don't want to be a DLI, there's a new boundary school. And that's why we need to make this part of the decision quickly, so that we have time to make that part of the decision still in the next couple of months.
Okay, and then second question, with the 4 to 2 option, does I'm trying to think of how to best phrase this. So I'm a Valley Crest parent, I come out of boundaries, half of us come from out of boundaries, and a good portion of the half of us come from further west, because
Correct.
Valley Crest is the furthest west
Yes.
school. So if we go with option 1, we can combine it down, and you guys choose which school, that program, are the logistics of the school and drop off and pick up and ability, is that one of the factors you take into consideration?
Yes.
Okay.
That is one of the things that I've talked in depth about with the task force, pick-up and drop-off areas. I'll just say, remind you, there is no perfect pick-up and drop-off area at any school in this world. It can be as large as the Talladega racetrack, and we're still gonna have issues, but it's, yes, there's something, building size, rooms, capacity, pick-up and drop-off, the location, the geography. I'm very aware that Valley Crest in particular, that's why I had that table showing that half of the students in DLI here come from mostly further west. And, but yes, we've looked at that, and we can still look at that.
Okay, my third question, sorry if anybody else has questions. I'm assuming that a magnet school would still accommodate 504s, IEPs,
Yes.
still have the
Yes.
behavioral, like all of that
Yes.
support would still be.
Yes.
in the magnet.
One by law, two, because we want to and should.
Okay.
Yes,
That's all my
yes,
questions.
absolutely. We still do all those things. See, it was worth it. It did it, and it was worth it. Are you guys just leaning? Oh, please, okay.
It's Anthony, all my 4 children, they are in the DLI. Myself, I speak 3 languages, and I know the value of languages. So we put our children in DLI because we know that's something more than other kids would have now or in the future when they go to, find their jobs or wherever they go. It's a valuable skill. My question is more, I don't care if it's Spanish, Korean, Mandarin, whatever you put us, heck, I will pay for my kids to speak multiple languages. My question is more like, why is the enrollment in our area dropping? You said climate change is, I'm not satisfied with that answer. I'm more curious, like, okay, are we doing something wrong? Why is the DLI enrollment in our area dropping? Because we're just trying to survive, like, okay, let's do this. But the problem is, why is this dropping? Did we make the wrong choice, or what's going on? That's what my concern is. Something's wrong.
Right. Perfect question. And it's so important that you hear this. Why is enrollment overall dropping? Is it something parents are doing wrong, you're doing wrong, DLI program? Why did we go from 75,000 students down to about 57? And could go down a little more in the next couple of years. Why is that happening? Oh man, the question of the night in a lot of ways, and I'll talk more about this, but it's no. Have you done anything wrong? Absolutely not. And it's not a DLI issue. It's not a Granite District issue. It's not a Utah issue. It's not even a U.S. issue. It's all over the world where the birth rates, first of all, are down. People just have fewer children. Another factor is our district. The demographics of our district are generally older. We're in the older part of the valley. If you're on the Wasatch Front, especially the eastern, on the East Bench, it's even older. But our district is a little more mature, I'll call it, overall. And even if, the family used to have 6 kids, they move away and a new family moves in, they're moving in with fewer students. So it's just a bigger picture issue that we see everywhere, even in Utah. And we still have more students on average per family than all the other states. So birth rate is down everywhere. A couple of other factors. Open enrollment. Open enrollment's been around for a while. It seems it's more of a thing now. In our state, you can choose to go to any school you want to, public school, as long as there's room at that school, and you can get your own transportation there. You can go to any school. So you see people not remaining in their boundary schools. They go a lot of places. Add to that 3 more charter schools. So there are just more schools out there, more options. Private schools, so-called scholarships, the state funds. Economics, home schools. There are all of these things that combine to give Granite District and tons of other districts around the country the challenge of lower enrollment in public school. I could talk for another hour just on this subject, but I'm giving you the big picture view. It's nothing you've done. We have to be more competitive, and it goes back to why the task force and our committee goes like, okay, maybe this creates a competitive advantage for us as a district to have a school like this, to draw students back that maybe have tried something else for a while, to draw them back to our district in a magnet school environment. If you want to talk more about that, stick around. We can talk for a while. I went to a conference this past summer in Dallas where counterparts of mine around the country to talk about these issues. And I don't know if it's good news or not, but everybody has these challenges. Even growing districts, if you look at Jordan District, Alpine District, where they have lots of new students, they still close schools because their population shifts. They grow in different parts of the district. Buildings get old, and the population is no longer in a certain area. They're way over here. So you build new schools over here, sometimes these schools get closed. So it's not just in districts that are low or lower enrollment, but even growing districts have these challenges too. We have some growth in our district. The only room really we have left for significant growth is here in this area and a little further west, out on Magna, Baptist Highway, in that area, and maybe room for a little more, but nothing like some of the districts have where they're building thousands and thousands of new units all the time. Does that make sense? Some? Okay. By the way, just so you know too, I'll just add, we've hired 5 years ago a company, a consulting company, to come in. This is what they do for a living. K-12, it used to be called Davis Demographics. They were absorbed, now they're MGT. Hired them 5 years ago, recently hired them again, and they come in to independently evaluate all of those things. Residential growth, all the things I mentioned, and give us their independent evaluation of all of those things. Forecasting number of students. And so I do that, that's my job for the district, that they come in and either confirm or challenge our data and say, well, this is what we're seeing. And again, I met with them, I rode around in the car for a good part of the day last week with 2 people from that company, looking at residential growth, taking numbers, looking at development, all these factors they look at to make sure that we're making good decisions that way. So it's not just us saying this, we're making sure that we're having somebody check our work, if you will, in educational terms to make sure we're doing it right.
Is that document available? Are we looking online or something?
Yes, we'll have the updated document. If you want the older one, I can contact me and I can show you where part. Do we have that online? I think it is online. And I can show you that. But we'll have an updated one hopefully in the next couple of months. Okay?
Hey, I'm from a different area, from Hillsdale, and I will say that most of our parents probably fall into the category of, this is at the school so local. I don't know how many will want to go to a magnet school. I see a lot of value of having the school in the community, be dual language. My kids have made friends with kids that they would never would have made friends with, who are our neighbors. But if they didn't learn Spanish in school, they wouldn't be able to be friends with our neighbors, because I don't speak Spanish. But I think you touched on it quite a bit, but I'm just wondering, if we did a magnet school, why would it not be more centrally located? If you have 4 schools and 2 are in the middle, and we're going, and I know the Hillsdale numbers are sad.
And I want to clarify, when you say centrally located amongst the 4?
Amongst
schools?
the 4 schools.
Yeah.
So those of us that are attending the school that we live in the community of, I mean, I see,
Right.
in my block, there's only 2 families that attend the school we're supposed to, because they go to charter schools, or they go to Armstrong, or they go other places, but I see a big value in being in school in my community. And honestly, the long picture of things, my kids have gotten like, oh, come to this school and, do accelerated learning or whatever, and I've always picked to be in the community and learn Spanish because it's invaluable. to be a harder sell for them to be like, oh, we gotta go across Bangor.
Sure,
That's a big deal.
sure. Yeah, Bangor's a,
And I'm sure this is probably going to be addressed tomorrow.
No, a couple of questions, and if you want to finish, another question, or a couple answers. We took, without names, we took addresses, plotted them on a map of everybody currently attending, and looked at that first, okay? Because again, keep in mind that even for Hillsdale, 80% of your students, coming from your boundary, that's 20% that are not. Where are they coming from? It's interesting to see that some people pass one or two schools that have DLI, go to another. I don't know the reasons, but that happens. We do have a significant portion, I know from here, of course, from Valley Crest, that come from further west. They come from Magnet area, quite a few of that. We did, in fact, look at the possibility of having, in years past, even fairly recently, surveying people there, should we have a DLI school in Magnet? And actually, their preference was STEAM or STEM emphasis in that area. And their feedback was, you know what, we want DLI, we want the Valley Crest, and that's where we'll continue to go. But part of it was a nod towards more folks that are coming from further west. Is there an absolute wrong answer here? Again, survey data. If I got a ton of people saying, geez, it should be another school, well, we have to look harder at that, figure out why. Is it just a bunch of people getting together and getting a voting block and say this is where we should go? Maybe, but if the data says that, let's go down that hole and find out why. Okay. We're breaking down.
Okay. If we go with option one, are boundaries going to be realigned at all?
So option one, meaning from 4 to 2.
Correct.
So again, it's not so much a readjustment. I don't know for sure. It depends on how many students or how many DLI students want to go from that one school to the other. If a majority goes and it makes that school so small, then we do have time to make that adjustment, boundary adjustment. There are state laws, by the way, a combination of state law, deadlines that we do have to meet. And it's run for a boundary change, it's only about a 30-day notice before the November board meetings. We have time to do that, make some adjustments. For closure, it's a 90-day notice. So we're bound by some of those things. I don't see that yet, but it all depends on the data and how firm. Even if we get the surveys back and it says 50% want to go, I can almost guarantee you're going to get a phone call from someone saying, how firm is this? We've done this before at other DLI schools and with closures. So even though you write it on there, please don't be upset. I know it's election season, but don't ignore our calls. So, okay, you said this. Are you feeling 100%, 80%, 50%? Because what you tell us really makes a difference on the decisions we make. So, please fill them out and tell your friends to fill it out. The answer is, I don't think so, but I can't guarantee that yet. We just have to see the numbers and how many choose to go to, want to go to another school.
I don't know, man.
Okay.
I think I should be loud enough. Oh, but I have to stand up.
So, my question is our job then as the community and as parents to first go with option one, option two, right? Choose one or the other, and then we will figure out which school will be what? Like, is that the plan? Recap.
Who decides between, like, Valley, Crest, or Monroe, or
Yes.
Hillsdale, or Stanford?
Because I know we're not voting, it's not, but it is data survey, we will take the data, and you guys will see, okay, because I'm a Valley Crest, I don't know what to call it, alumni, cheerleader, everything, I am the mascot. So I personally would like my children to come to Valley Crest, but I would understand if, we need to move it because of everyone's, circumstances. But I just want to know, like, what's going to fall, what factors are we looking at? What are we looking at to vote for the school that's going to be a magnet or, one versus the other?
So our job. What's our job?
Yeah, your job, again, is to give us that feedback, to give us your ideas, even if you want to say, look, my first choice is this option, my second choice is that option, but if you can, please tell us why, so we know. You're right, again, I don't want to call it a vote, because it's not, hey, whoever gets the most vote wins, but it is feedback, it's data, it's influence, not a vote, but it's influence. The board, I promise you, is going to see every bit of this feedback and data, because I give it to them, and they're going to look at that and say, okay, this means something. If we have a super majority of a area that wants to do a certain thing, it's hard to say no to that. We could, because maybe there are other factors we have to consider in addition to just what people want. But if we can get all of this data collected and collated and processed over the next 2 to 3 weeks, our goal, we really need to, when I go to board meeting, the first Tuesday in October, right, Julie? Second, third, something like that? First, October 1st. Okay, yeah, first Tuesday in October, whatever that day is.
It is the first.
Okay, first Tuesday in October is when I go to board meeting, and is where, right now the plan is to make the recommendation to the board as to which option is happening. Okay?
Steve, sorry. Just want to recognize our president, board president.
Sorry, yes, we've had a few others, Paul McDermott, board president, and some others just keep sliding in. So thank you for being here.
Yes, and I just want to comment, we have extra survey forms, extra pencils right here, or still out on the table, and then there's a basket that you can drop a completed form in, so that we can make sure that while this is fresh on your mind, that we get your feedback.
My question is, so the options that are being presented, they're definitive, there's like no way that it's going to stay the way it is right now?
Are these the only two options? Is there an option 3, which means we don't make any changes and it stays the way it is now? Nothing is impossible, but we are approaching this as if these are the only two options. The reason is, we know, we've been hearing for years now, quite frankly, from principals, from parents that write us, that email us, that contact us, from many people, that this is untenable. We can't continue like this. This is not good education. It's not working well. We need to do something. And so when we added one, probably, if not the biggest one, the biggest reasons, again, we chose to do this study this year was because of this, because of DOI, and our concerns about providing the best quality education for all students. So the board can do what the board wants to do, obviously, and I don't want to put pressure on them. They have a tough job. But right now, we're presenting this as two options. It would have to be something pretty dramatic and something that we just find in survey data over the next few weeks that says, you know, holy cow, this is not going to work. If we find that, we can't do it. But right now, we're considering this as the only these two options.
Earlier you said that they're kind of leaning towards the magnet option more than the 4-2 option. And obviously there are pros and cons to either side. Can you give us reasons why they're leaning more towards the magnet option as opposed to the other one?
Did I say that? I did, okay, just checking. I did
It's
say
on
that.
the video.
I did, okay. I said it. I own it. I said it. And it's true. I think a lot of this was just the excitement and the momentum of seeing the possibilities of what a magnet school could do. Knowing again, there's some possible things that we're not aware of. But we think we have the right, fairly unique situation in this part of our district to make this work. We think it gives us the best opportunity to focus on one program and do that one program at a school instead of trying to do multiple things at a school. Like anything in our life, when you can focus on one thing at a time, you tend to do it a lot better. And it's in a way that's simple. It's not as if we came to this conclusion overnight. Again, looked at this stuff for months, and I really charged the DLI task force with really pressing each other and us. So we get in a room, again, with the PAF, the committee, with about 30 directors. And I gotta tell you, these are pretty strong personalities. But their job is to push back with each other, with me, to say, have you thought about this? Don't forget about this. Please advocate for this. And we really push each other to make sure we're making the best decision. And that's what happened in that room. And after a while, you start fleshing things out and say, we think that's the best solution. Is it a long list? No. We think there are challenges with going from 4 to 2. Possible. Again, going back to the data, how many people would rather that than, okay, if they're going to do that, can we make that work? But if you look at just those 2 options, which we are now, we think the better solution is to be able to focus on one thing in one school and make that work for the students.
Are we allowed to know, like, are you able to tell us what feedback you got from the teachers? I'm curious.
Sure. Her question was, can I tell you what feedback we got from the teachers? We haven't really done a survey with the teachers yet. It was just a conversation we had last night. Went over the same presentation, answered a lot of their questions. Some of their questions, of course, are a little different because they're like, where am I going to be next year? You know, what's going to happen here? So their questions were a little different, but I think it's okay to say that they talked about both options, but in the end, they were, I think the momentum in that group was towards a magnet option. I'm hesitant to speak for them too much, but the conversation there was just different than your concerns, because theirs is largely, okay, if I can continue to teach what I'm teaching, I'm willing to probably go anywhere, but as long as I can continue to do what I do. So, you know what? You guys go to the teachers. You can talk to the teachers. I can't control what they say. They can say what they want to say, and again, SEPs, you'll have a chance to talk, maybe process this stuff amongst yourselves over the next week or 2. Create a little group that you email or something back and forth and hash some of these things out. But talk to the teachers. And if they bring up something that I haven't talked about tonight, or that we haven't discussed, or no one's thought of, send it in. Send it in. I would rather back off of something or have to backtrack on something now, and even admit, okay, maybe that wasn't right, or I was wrong on that. I'll do that now over the next couple of weeks. I don't want to have to do that in a year or 2 when we're way down that road. So please, we'll take any of that feedback. More. Let's go about 5 more minutes with open questions, and we'll close the official part of the meeting. I'm going to stick around, and please come up and visit up here.
It's also happening to other districts, because when I look at the data here, it says that we are above. Birth rate for West Valley is 14 point something per 1,000 population, whereas for Salt Lake is like 11. So we have a high birth rate in this area compared to other cities. So the question that I have is this only happening to us, or is it because it's West Valley, and then the district said, okay, let's make them suck this up?
Right. So I want to clarify, you said, is this only happening here? What do you mean by this? The lower birth rate, or?
West Valley C.
Right. And as far as just DLI, or is lower enrollment? Yeah. Right. Right. This corridor happens to have the largest concentration of charter schools in the state. This area, the South Corridor. So more competition, more schools. Another one just opened a few weeks ago. So this corridor has a lot. It absolutely has a lot. Is it the only place this is happening, or is this the only place that DLI may be struggling? Is that accurate to say that?
Yeah, because you know the zip code politics.
Right, sure.
Are we victim of something?
Now, are we a victim of something in this area? Or are we been kind of picked on or for some reason? Because because somebody feels like they can. Is DLI struggling only in this area?
We closed 2 other DLI schools last year and relocated them in a boundary change. So it's happening district-wide. This is not unique to West Valley and throughout the state. Like we heard from Tooele that they're closing programs there too. Yeah.
So the ones that were closed in the 2022 study, at the end of 2022, Spring Lane, which was Chinese DLI, it's kind of in the Cottonwood area, east part of the district, and then Mill Creek Elementary was Spanish DLI. And those students both went to other schools. Those 2 schools, overall, not just the program, the schools were closed. And again, the Tooele situation that you mentioned, and there are others around the state. I can tell you that we've been in touch with people at the state office and the state level that are struggling with the same challenges with DLI around the state. What do we do? What do we do when a school gets too low in enrollment? How do we handle this? Some, like Hillsdale, have gone to what they call a single teacher model per grade level instead of 2. So I'm trying that. And others, quite frankly, are closing some of their programs, are struggling, I would say it politically, with how to do that. Because there is a commitment. There should be a commitment to those families when you start a program. How do you close it? Do you phase it out? Do you move it to a different school? So yeah, I promise you it's not unique to this area. Yes, sir.
Between option 1 and option 2, which one saves the most money?
Between option 1 and option 2, which one saves the most money? I love that. I mean, look, money's reality, right? And we should be considering that. Our first option, I'll tell you always, when we close a school, adjust a boundary, change a program, is about education of our students. That doesn't always save money, but is it on the list? Yeah, it should. It should be. Is Todd Hall here? Did he already leave, our business administrator? I was going to lean on him a little bit. I don't know if I have a perfect answer to that yet. I don't know if we know. I'll do my best to look at that. For instance, when you close a school, now we're not talking really about closing school in this scenario. There are 2 other schools proposed, currently Orchard and Redwood. Closing the school can save some money, but it's not as much as some people think. There's still utilities and other things that have to happen. In some ways, it can, in some areas, for instance, if busing is approved, if transportation is approved, will that add busing routes that Granite District would largely have to pay for? Because you get state reimbursement on the routes that are for a traditional school. We don't typically get state reimbursement funds for a special program like DLI. So that would be something, as I understand it, and again, Todd, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't necessarily get reimbursed for those routes. So in one area, I can tell you that could likely increase funds. But could there be some other areas we would save? I think there can be. And if you want to contact me directly, and I'll do my best to try to come up with some figure that helps us determine that.
The other half of that was, why don't we shut down one of the schools? I mean, it's enrollment, bottom line, right? So that would disperse the rest of the enrollment to the other 3 schools.
Right.
I know that's the ugly.
Sure. No, that's why we're here. That's what we talk about. So again, the question, if you didn't hear it, why don't we just shut down one of these schools? Why don't we just close one of these 4 schools? We've looked at that a little bit. Again, as part of the bigger picture, keep in mind what we're talking about is kind of a subset or part of the bigger picture from the 3500 South Corridor study. Orchard's currently recommended, Redwood's currently recommended. I think a lot of that depends, quite frankly, because we don't know how many people are going to choose where they're going to go. I don't think this late in the game that would be a choice for us this year. In future years, if enrollment continues to go down at these 4 and even other schools in the area, could we have to circle back and consider that? It's possible. It's possible anywhere. But we just didn't feel like we had quite reached that threshold yet, that tipping point to consider just simply we got to close one and combine all of these others.
how low does it need to get to be considered to be closed? Like, are 250, under 350?
Great question. How low does any school really need to get before we say this is a problem? Our standard, more than thinking about the total number of students, what we look at is teachers per grade level in the elementary. We want a minimum of 3 teachers per grade level in an elementary. I'm going to talk about this next week in a little more detail. If you look back at any of our presentations over the last 5, 6, 7 years, this is a recurring theme. There's an economy of scale. There's an efficiency. Remember, you can be too big, you can be too small. If you play that out with the 27.25, you can do the math, but anything less than 3 teachers on average, sometimes you can have 4 of your grades with 3 and maybe 1 with 2. When you start getting below that 3 on average, then it almost becomes a spiral down where it's harder and harder to maintain your class size. Then you have split grade level classes with first and second, third, and so on. And there's many things that happen. Even though you're funded the same, you're funded, again, per teacher or / per student for the teachers. There's other monies that come to a school outside of that you don't have. Those monies are often what gives you playground duty, help in the cafeteria, school psychologists, social workers, and so on, and so on, and so on. The higher the number, 4 to 5 teachers per grade level, like we mentioned earlier, helps us even out those classes. If you have 2 classes per grade level, you typically oftentimes see highs and lows in those class sizes. When you have 1 per grade level, what you have, no choice. That's your teacher. When you have personality struggles, and as a parent, you want to make a move, there is no option. Then when you do, you leave to another school perhaps. There are just many things that happen. I'm giving you a little bit of the short version of a long story to say that 3 teachers per grade level is the minimum we want to hit. When you get below that, then it's a red flag. There are other issues, there are other factors to look at. Facility condition, we call the FCI, Facility Condition Index, walking routes, transportation issues, so on and so on. Again, I'll show you those on the list next week. There are multiple things. I'll caution you, it's not always about enrollment. This is obvious. You'll see this next week. If you look at Redwood Elementary, they're currently over about 500 students, and they have a current proposal to close. There are other factors, like I said, a combination of other things. Every year it's different. Every year a different factor tends to rise to the top. And that's a combination of those things that we look at. Sometimes the history, what do we look at? Forecasted enrollment for a certain school, a certain area. Okay, they may be low now. We know there's a lot of growth. They're going to come back up. They may be okay now, but we can tell, demographers tell us it's going to continue to go down. Schools, again, there's so many factors there. So, all great questions.
Is it safe to say that all of the boundaries in the schools that are being studied are going to change?
All, is it all 18 to 20?
Yes.
No. It's safe to say that they're not all going to change.
So there are going to be some that won't change at all?
Yeah. In fact, I'll again show you. You'll see a map next week that shows you. I'll give you some ideas. Anytime you make a change, there's a ripple effect, right? A domino effect, where if you change here, then therefore it has to change in other places. There are some schools in these areas that, at least this go around, will not be touched. There are others that will be significantly changed. Either closed or perhaps added to slightly or significantly.
When is the meeting next week?
The 11th and 12th. The 11th, correct me here, at Granger High School at 6 p.m. And the next day on the 12th at Hunter Junior, also at 6 p.m. Again, different locations, same information. Sometimes the information can vary slightly with the community, because you'll start, certain communities want to know certain things, the get off on things, but it's intended to be the same meeting both nights. And again, I can come back and talk DLI, and I will have to some, but that'll be a wider, more broad focus for the study overall. And I can promise you there'll be people from Orchard and good other areas with some good questions too. Thank you. Please, either now, in person, online, whatever, fill this out. I'll end the official meeting. I'm going to stick around up here, put the microphone down, and be glad to talk to you.